Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we are going into our /nosleep on a 4-part journey written by page turner 627. Without any further hesitation, let's dive in. A killer gave us a list of instructions we had to follow, or more would die, part 1. Written by page turner 627. The radio is low, playing I'm Getting Used to You by Selena as our unmarked Ford Explorer rolls down the dusty road toward the Tijuana River Valley. I adjust the rear view mirror, carefully scrutinizing myself. I see there's a trace of lipstick on the collar of my shirt. I hope the dim light will keep it hidden. I catch a glimpse of Audrey, her fiery red hair still slightly disheveled. She's gazing out the passenger window, the reflection of passing headlights glinting off her features. We both avoid eye contact. We haven't spoken much since leaving the motel room, officially booked for deep cover surveillance work, though the only observation we'd done was of each other. I promised myself the last time we did it that it would be our last. The fear that gripped me when the condom broke was a wake-up call I couldn't ignore. Audrey's panicked eyes as she took the morning after pill are etched in my memory. We had been playing with fire, and that night we nearly got burned. Yet, here we are, slipping back into our old rhythms as if nothing had happened. "You going to answer that?" she asked, nodding towards my phone vibrating against the dashboard. The screen lit up again, flashing a picture of my wife Rocio and our boys. I pressed a button on the steering wheel, silencing the buzzing. "I'll call her back later," I murmur, feeling a pang of guilt tighten around my chest. Audrey shrugged, her focus returning to the shadowy outlines of the landscape ahead. "If you say so, Ramón. But it might be important." "It's just Rocio checking up on me," I say, trying to sound nonchalant. Audrey shifts slightly in her seat, her eyes never leaving the road. "Does she know about us?" "She doesn't," I say, keeping my voice steady, though a trace of defensiveness sneaks in. "She's just been on edge since the Vasquez case. After the shootout, she thinks every call might be the one. The one that ends with you not coming home?" Audrey finishes for me, her voice softening. "Yeah," I murmured, the weight of the words settling heavy in the car. A thick fog begins to roll in from the coast, shrouding the landscape in an ethereal veil. The headlights of the Explorer cut through the haze, revealing only brief glimpses of the road ahead. As we approach the outpost, the sight before us is eerie. Silhouettes of Border Patrol agents, their forms hazy and indistinct through the fog. They look less like people and more like ghostly sentinels keeping watch over the edge of the world. The border fence stretched out into the Pacific Ocean, its metal bars disappearing into the misty waters, giving the whole scene a surreal, almost dreamlike quality. "Ready?" I ask, my voice a bit rougher than I intended. "Yeah, let's do this," she replies, her voice all business now. She glances at me, her expression unreadable for a second before she turns away, focusing on the gathering shadows stretching before us. We step out into the chilly air, the ground beneath our feet soft with recent rain, and make our way toward the group of border agents. They look relieved to see us, understandable considering the circumstances. One of the agents steps forward, his face partially obscured by the brim of his hat and the fog. "Detective Ramón Castillo, San Diego Sheriff's Department," I announce, flashing my badge. "This is my partner, Detective Audrey Dawson." The agent nods, extending a hand, rough and calloused. "Watch Commander Rick Martinez, U.S. Border Patrol. Thanks for coming down here on such short notice. We've got a mess on our hands." "What's going on, Commander?" I ask, trying to keep my tone even. Martinez's eyes shift toward the portable command post set up a few yards away. "It's best if you see it for yourselves." The command post is a hive of activity. Radios crackle with static, agents huddle over maps, and the air is thick with the smell of stale coffee and damp earth. Martinez gestures for us to step inside. He leads us to a set of monitors displaying grainy night vision footage. Pulling up a pair of chairs to a particular monitor, the commander motions for us to sit. He doesn't waste time with pleasantries. About 3 hours ago, one of our infrared cameras caught a group of migrants moving through the valley. They were following the usual routes, nothing out of the ordinary at first. He pauses, his expression tightening. Then something went very wrong. Martinez hunches over the keyboard, his fingers tapping a rhythm on the spacebar as he seeks out the specific clip. "Here," he mutters, and the grainy footage begins to play on the small screen. The video shows what appears to be about a dozen migrants, huddled together, their movements weary yet determined as they navigate the marshy landscape. The infrared gives their figures an otherworldly glow, making them look like specters floating across the screen. My chest tightens, a familiar pang of empathy. Though I was born here, my mom wasn't. She crossed marshland much like this, driven by hopes of a better life. "Keep your eyes on the left side," Martinez advises. As the migrants shuffle through the marsh, one of them pauses, glancing back nervously. The infrared camera, designed to pick up heat signatures, suddenly reveals something chilling. A figure that emits no heat whatsoever. It's an anomaly, darker than the surrounding night, moving with an eerie, fluid grace. The figure moves swiftly, almost gliding over the ground. Without any warning, it strikes. The group of migrants erupts into chaos, scattering in every direction like a disturbed hive of bees. Screams pierce the night, although they're silent on the footage. The migrants, in their desperate bid to escape, are picked off one by one. Each time the figure reappears, a migrant drops to the ground, motionless. The figure's movements are precise, almost predatory, and terrifyingly efficient. Martinez pauses the video, and the screen freezes on a particularly chilling frame. One of the migrants, isolated, his heat signature intense with fear as the entity looms over him. The shape is amorphous, almost ghostly, a swirling mass of blackness that doesn't fully register as any identifiable creature. "Shit," Audrey murmurs, her eyes not leaving the screen. "What are we dealing with here?" "No idea." Martinez shakes his head, his eyes not leaving the screen. "I've watched this over a dozen times. It's like nothing I've ever seen. Thermal doesn't pick it up right. It's cold, colder than anything alive should be." "Any survivors?" I ask, though I'm not sure I want to hear the answer. Martinez pauses the video, his jaw clenched. "We sent a team in right after the camera lost them. They found clear signs of a struggle. Shoes stuck in the mud, dropped belongings, patches of blood. But of the migrants, nothing. No bodies, no survivors. Just gone." He lets out a heavy sigh, rubbing his forehead as if to clear away the grim images. "Well, except one," he adds, almost as an afterthought. "We found him half buried in the mud, unconscious but alive." "Who?" I ask, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. "Enrique Salazar," Martinez replies, dripping with disdain. "He's been on our radar for a while. Coyote, drug muling, you name it. If it's illegal, he's dipped his fingers in it at some point." I lean forward, my interest piqued. "Where is he now?" "In our holding area," Martinez replies. "He's shaken up bad. Keeps saying things that don't make a lick of sense. We figured he was high, or maybe in shock." Audrey and I exchange a look. "Can you take us to him?" she asks. "Sure, I guess," Martinez agrees, standing up. "Come with me." He leads us out of the command tent and toward a smaller, more secure area where they're holding Salazar. As we approach the secure holding area, a battered old trailer encased in high barbed wire, the muffled sound of shouting grows louder. Even through the thick metal walls, Salazar's voice carries a distinct note of hysteria.
Madre de los silencios, reina del destino. A tus pies deposito mi temor más genuino. Moter of silences, queen of destiny.
"At your feet I lay my most genuine fear." His words echo in the night. "He's been at it for hours," Martinez grumbles. As we draw closer, a young agent steps away from the trailer, his face lined with exhaustion. He straightens up as he spots Martinez, casting a wary glance at us as we approach. "Agent Ortega here," Martinez introduces him with a nod. He found Mr. Salazar half buried in muck and babbling nonsense. Ortega nods in acknowledgement, his eyes flicking towards the noisy trailer. Whatever he's seen, it's got him scared shitless. Nothing he says makes any sense. We pause at the door, the metallic clang of the trailer echoing slightly in the still night air. Ortega unlocks the door, pushing it open with a creak. The inside of the trailer is dimly lit, the only light coming from a harsh fluorescent bulb that flickers intermittently. Salazar is cuffed to a bench at the far end of the trailer, his clothes muddy and disheveled. His eyes are wide, darting around in panic, and as the door opens, he recoils as if expecting an attack. The network of tattoos crawling up his arms and neck stands out, the intricate designs unmistakable in the dim light. The most prominent among them is the black cobra that marks him as a member of the infamous Tijuana drug cartel. Martinez, unfazed by the man's disheveled state, addresses him with a firm tone. "Hey, Salazar, there are detectives here to talk to you." Salazar doesn't seem to register our presence at first, his gaze fixed on something only he can see. After a moment, he slowly turns his head towards us, his eyes narrowing as he tries to focus. "Dulce angel de muerte, escucha mi plegaria." "Sweet angel of death, hear my prayer," he mutters to himself. Martinez shrugs, standing back as Audrey and I move closer to Salazar. The stench of mud and sweat is palpable as we approach the cuffed man. He's still mumbling under his breath, his voice a mix of panic and delirium. I step forward, keeping my voice even. "Mr. Salazar, I'm Detective Castillo, and this is my partner, Detective Dawson. We need to understand what happened. Can you tell us what you saw?" Salazar's eyes flit between Audrey and me, his breathing erratic. "It was the devil, essay," he begins, his voice dropping to a whisper as if the very memory scared him. "A shadow that ate light, man. It moved through them like smoke through a chain-link fence." Audrey leans in, her voice soft but insistent. "Enrique, we need you to focus. What did you see out there? Was it a person? An animal?" Salazar shakes his head vigorously, his face contorted with fear as he glances around the cramped trailer as if expecting the walls to close in on him. No, it wasn't no person. It wasn't an animal. It was wrong to do mal," he stammers, the words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "It had..." He pauses, his eyes widening. "Una cara rota." "A broken face?" Audrey asks, kneeling down to his level. "Yeah, like it was shattered, cracked all over, but still moving, breathing, watching." His hands tremble as he makes a motion in the air, mimicking something fragmenting apart. "It looked at me, man, and I felt it in my soul. Can you describe how it moved, or what it did to the others?" I ask, trying to guide him back to specifics. "It moved like fog, like mist," Salazar continues, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "It didn't walk. It floated, man. And wherever it passed, people screamed, fell down, didn't get up. I ran so fast." His voice breaks, and he looks down, the haunted expression etched deep in his face. "Look, detectives, with all due respect, I don't buy this supernatural mumble-jumble," Martinez speaks up, his voice a low rumble. "It's more likely cartel activity. The Sinaloa cartel's been known to take migrants hostage, use them for smuggling or worse. And him, he's been neck-deep in that world. Shithead is just playing us." Audrey's expression remains impassive, but her green eyes are sharp, taking in every detail. "So, you think the cartel is dressing up their actions with what? Legends? Superstitions?" "It's not the first time," Martinez admits with a shrug. "Fear is a powerful tool. Make people afraid of ghosts or curses, and they won't look too close at what's really happening. Commander, can you give us a moment alone with the suspect?" I ask, my voice calm but authoritative. Martinez catches the hint, his eyebrows lifting slightly. Right. I'll give you some space. He makes a show of checking his watch. I need to check in with the command post anyway. Holler if you need anything. As he steps out, the metal door clanging shut behind him, the trailer feels even more confined. I lock eyes with Audrey, and without a word, we both understand the gravity of the situation. Desperate times call for desperate measures. We need to pry information from Salazar quickly. Salazar's eyes widen in fear as I grip him by the shoulders and slam him against the wall. His face hits the metal with a dull thud, and a trickle of blood seeps from his nose, staining his dirt-caked shirt. He gasps, the panic palpable. I lean in, my voice cold and calculating. Mira Pendejo, what do you think would happen if we shipped you to RJD and locked your ass in a cell full of Sinaloas? Detective Castillo here, Audrey gestures to me, was undercover with the Sinaloa cartel for over a year. He's seen things that would turn your blood cold. Things that make your little devil story sound like a bedtime fairy tale. I pull out my pocket knife, flipping it open with a swift, practiced motion. The metallic click sounds unnaturally loud in the cramped space. I lean in close, the cold steel just grazing the stubble on Salazar's neck. See, Cabron, the Federation, they like to make examples out of rival cartel members. I growl, my voice low and menacing. They got this little trick called El Corte de Corbata, the necktie cut. You know what that is. I draw the tip of the knife lightly across his skin, just enough to draw a bead of blood. Nuestra Señora de la Santa Muerte, que tus husos son la fortaleza de mi alma. Our Lady of Holy Death, may your bones be the fortress of my soul. Salazar whimpers a prayer. I pantomime with the knife, tracing a line down his neck. They cut your throat open from here, I say, dragging the tip of the blade slowly downward, all the way down to here. I gesture towards his sternum, my movements deliberate and chilling. And then, I add, my voice cold and matter-of-fact, they pull your tongue out through the slit. You'll feel it tearing through your flesh, the taste of your own blood choking you as you struggle to breathe. We can do this the easy way, where you tell us everything you know and maybe, just maybe, you get some kind of protection. Or, Audrey chimes in. You get a brand new tie, I say, pressing the blade slightly, just enough for him to feel its bite. It spoke to me, Salazar mumbles, his voice barely audible. Not with words, but it's like it whispered directly into my mind.
It said, sigue el rastro de las estrellas caídas hasta la niña dormida.
Follow the trail of the fallen stars to the sleeping child. The fallen stars? Audrey presses. Salazar clutches at his shirt, his fingers trembling. He said, dulces, dulces. He mutters repeatedly, the single word spilling out between labored breaths. Dulces? I echo. Like candy? What's that supposed to mean? He doesn't seem to hear her, or chooses not to respond. His gaze is distant, unfocused, as if he's seeing something beyond the grimy walls of the trailer. Dulces, dulces, he continues, the word becoming a mantra, obsessive and relentless. I let out a heavy sigh, realizing we're not going to get anything substantial out of him. I ease my grip entirely, stepping back. We're done here, I say, my tone dismissive, yet internally, I'm filing away every word. Audrey nods, and we step out of the trailer, letting the heavy metal door slam shut behind us. The cold night air hits us, and the sound of the ocean mixes with the rustling of the marsh grass. Martinez is waiting for us, his silhouette outlined by the dim lights of the command post. Anything useful? He asks. Maybe, I reply, keeping my cards close. We need to see the crime scene. The drive to the site is tense and silent, the SUV's headlights slicing through the thick fog like twin blades. The landscape around us feels alien, the marshy ground and twisted trees casting eerie shadows. When we arrive, the scene is exactly as Martinez described, chaos personified. The ground is churned up, littered with abandoned belongings and deeper grooves that suggest a struggle. The fog hangs heavy, muffling sounds and giving the whole area a claustrophobic feel. The area feels haunted by the terror that transpired, the silence almost oppressive under the weight of unknown horrors. Audrey and I begin a meticulous search of the site, our flashlights piercing the fog, casting long shadows on the marshy ground. Every rustle in the underbrush has us tensing, half expecting whatever caused the chaos to reappear. I start from where the video last showed the migrants, moving slowly, searching for any clues that might have been overlooked in the initial panic. Audrey takes the western flank, her steps deliberate, eyes scanning the mud for tracks or signs of disturbance. It's clear this was the epicenter of the panic. Shoes, children's, women's, a single man's boot, are half buried in the mud. I pick up a small, worn-out teddy bear, its eyes missing, and wonder about the child who held it last. The personal items are scattered as if their owners dropped everything in a desperate bid to flee from whatever horror pursued them. Anything, I call out after a few minutes, my voice low, wary of disturbing the dense fog that seems to swallow sound. Nothing yet, she replies, her tone just as tense. We keep searching, the sense of urgency mounting as the minutes stretch into an hour. I pause when I catch a glint of something metallic among the dense reeds. A flash of silver that doesn't belong in the muck. Crouching down, I brush aside the wet vegetation and find a small, silver locket. The clasp is delicate, caked with mud but still functional. I pop it open, revealing the photograph of a young girl, no more than 13 or 14, her smile frozen in time within the confines of the locket. Scanning the ground, I notice more metallic objects scattered around. A keychain, a pair of battered dog tags, a twisted fork, a small brass bell, a couple tarnished coins, and a metal whistle, all lying within a few feet of each other. It's as if they've been deliberately placed to draw the eye, the gleaming metal stark against the dark earth. "Hey, Dawson, look at this," I call over my shoulder. She's not far, her silhouette ghostly in the shifting fog. She jogs over, her boots sucking at the mud with each step. Audrey kneels beside me, her flashlight sweeping over the scene. "Look at how they're laid out," she murmurs, tracing the air with her finger. The items seem to form a pattern, each one pointing to the next, culminating in a rough shape. "It's the Big Dipper," she whispers, a tone of disbelief in her voice. "See? The handle here and the bowl there." I look again, squinting through the fog and the dim light of our flashlights, and it clicks. She's right. The arrangement of the items, a seemingly random assortment of personal belongings, is a deliberate depiction of the constellation. My mind races back to Salazar's frenzied babbling about the trail of the fallen stars to the sleeping child. It couldn't be a coincidence. I remember learning about the Big Dipper in the Girl Scouts, Audrey murmur. We used it to find Polaris, the North Star. It was like a game back then, using the stars to find our way back to camp. Her voice trails off. With a renewed sense of purpose, she starts tracing the items making up the makeshift constellation laid out in the marshy ground. The fork and dog tags are pointer stars. Catching on to her intent, I follow her hand as she draws an imaginary line from the pointers through the fog, trying to pinpoint where the North Star should be in our earthly recreation. I signal the others with a sharp whistle, the sound cutting through the damp air like a knife. Martinez and the other agents converge on our position. Their silhouettes loom out of the fog, each one appearing as if materialized from the mist itself. "Form up," I command in a low voice, not wanting to disrupt the eerie silence more than necessary. "We've got a lead." "Might be walking into a trap, though," Martinez warns, drawing his sidearm. We form a tight formation, moving with our weapons drawn, our senses heightened. Audrey's beside me, her P320 at the ready, her eyes darting through the mist. Martinez flanks us, his Glock aimed low, his breathing controlled but audible in the eerie silence. The rest of his team fan out behind us, forming a loose perimeter. The fog thickens as we proceed, each step forward feeling more like a descent into another, less tangible world. Visibility shrinks to mere feet, The world beyond our tightly formed group blurs into indistinct shapes and muffled sounds. The air grows colder, clinging to my skin with damp fingers. Suddenly, a putrid smell slices through the moist air. It's a stench that clings to the inside of your throat, acrid and unmistakable. Audrey wrinkles her nose, her expression one of disgust mixed with alarm. "That smell," she murmurs, her voice barely a whisper over the soft murmur of the fog. "Burning flesh." I nod, swallowing hard against the bile rising in my throat. The smell brings back unwelcome memories of other, darker places. The smell intensifies, the burning scent so overpowering now that our eyes begin to water. We push forward, though every instinct screams at us to turn back. Martinez holds up a hand, signaling us to stop. We freeze. The only sounds are our heavy breathing and the distant faint lapping of waves against the shore. He points to a barely visible light ahead, not strong, but enough to pierce through the fog slightly. "There," he hisses under his breath. The ground underfoot becomes firmer, the marsh giving way to dry, cracked earth that crunches beneath our boots. The sickly sweet stench of burning flesh intensifies. I'm the first to see her, a small figure propped up against an old, gnarled tree. Her position is unnatural, arranged meticulously. As we draw closer, the horrific details come into sharp focus. It's a child, a young girl. Her face is painted to resemble a skull, stark white with hollow black circles around sunken eyes and dark, exaggerated lines stretching down her cheeks, mimicking the visage of Santa Muerte, the Mexican folk saint of death. Her small form is dressed in tattered robes that flutter slightly with the breeze. Her head is adorned with a crown of thorny roses, the sharp thorns piercing her brow, causing crimson rivulets that resemble tears of blood to trickle down her face. Her chest is open with surgically precise cuts, revealing a hollow cavity where her heart should be. Inside, a small flame burns, the fire somehow contained, only charring the flesh around the edges of the wound, casting eerie shadows on her pale skin. Audrey gasps, her hand going to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. "Jesus, it's her," she murmurs, her voice breaking. It takes me a moment to understand. Then I see it, the girl from the locket. "Fuck!" Martinez swears under his breath, his face set in a grim line as he radios for backup. "We need CSI here now," he barks into the handset, his voice rough with anger and something akin to fear. The commander barks orders to his team, setting up a secure perimeter around the girl. The area is marked with evidence flags, each flutter of the small, bright squares a stark contrast to the somber surroundings. Audrey and I begin documenting everything with meticulous detail, our cameras clicking in the otherwise oppressive silence. As we inspect the body, it becomes disturbingly clear that there are signs of cannibalism. Bite marks, unmistakably human, mar the girl's limbs, the flesh torn away in some places to reveal bone underneath. Around the child's form, the ground is littered with what appear to be votive items. Candles still flickering weakly, a set of rosary beads, and oddly, a single cell phone lying a few feet from her body. It's an older model Nokia, probably a burner. I pull on a pair of latex gloves with a snap and carefully pick up the device, ensuring not to smudge any prints that might be on it. I examine the battered old cell phone. The screen is cracked and smudged with grime, but it flickers to life under my touch, asking for a 6-digit passcode. I pause, staring at the prompt. I thumb the power button, cycling through the flickering options, and freeze when I remember Salazar's manic repetition of the word dulces, the single word hauntingly echoing in my mind. I think about how letters correspond to numbers on a phone keypad, much like the old 1-800 commercial numbers. It's a long shot, but given the lack of immediate leads, it's the only one we have. I begin to match the letters to numbers, typing them out tentatively. D3, U8, L5, C2, E3, S7. I hold my breath, half expecting it to be wrong. But then, the phone unlocks. I stare at the unlocked screen, my heart hammering in my chest. The dim light of the phone casts ghostly shadows across my fingers as I navigate through the cluttered interface. Amidst the jumble of apps and icons, a single video file stands out, labeled simply Ultimo Mensaje, last message. I tap on it, and the video begins to play. Martinez, Audrey, and the rest of the team huddle closer, their breath visible in the chilly night air. The footage is grainy, the colors washed out, but the image is unmistakable. It's the same girl we just found, only now she's alive, her eyes wide with a terror that chills me to the bone. She's dressed in the Santa Muerte costume, seated on a wooden chair in a dimly lit room. She glances off-camera nervously, as if awaiting a cue or fearing a reprimand, before her eyes return to focus on the camera. Her hands tremble slightly as she holds up a piece of worn paper, reading from it in a shaky voice.
Mi nombre es Lucía Álvarez. Tengo 14 años y soy de Zamora, Michoacán. My name is Lucía Álvarez.
I am 14 years old, and I am from Zamora, Michoacán, she begins, her voice a whisper.
Chis wallows hard. Gerais darting off camera again before continuing. Tengo un mensaje del dispersador de cenizas para aquellos que han visto la muerte de cerca y han sobrevivido.
I have a message from the scatterer of ashes to the ones who have seen death and survived. Dice que deben seguir estas instructions exactamente como los describo, he says. He says you must follow these instructions exactly as I described them, she reads, her eyes scanning the paper. Lucia's voice grows even more tremulous as she reads from the crumpled sheet, each word spoken with reluctant precision.
Paso 1. Vayan a la vieja capilla de San Pedro, en las afueras de Otay Mesa. Allí, encontrarán una cruz invertida enterrada en el desván.
Step 1. Go to the old chapel of San Pedro, on the outskirts of Otay Mesa. There, you will find an inverted cross buried in the attic. Audrey pulls out a pen and notepad, jotting down each word with meticulous care. Her hand moves swiftly, ensuring nothing is missed.
Paso 2. Debajo de la cruz, encontrarán una caja de huesos pertenecientes a la serpiente emplumada Quetzalcóatl.
Step 2. Beneath the cross, you will find a box of bones belonging to the feathered serpent Quetzalcóatl. Lucia's voice shakes as she continues, her fingers clutching the paper tightly.
Paso 3. Coloquen los huesos sobre el altar de piedra que verán en el centro de la capilla. Ordenen los huesos en forma de espiral, desde el más grande hasta el más pequeño, hacia el centro.
Step 3. Place the bones on the stone altar you will see at the center of the chapel. Arrange the bones in a spiral form, from largest to smallest, towards the center.
Paso 4. Enciendan una vela en las cuencas de los ojos del cráneo en honor al Señor del Día y de los Vientos.
Step 4. Light a candle in the eye sockets of the skull in honor of the Lord of the Day and the Winds.
Lucía sais brim with tears as chicken cluts. Esto debe hacerse antes de la próxima luna nueva para aplacar al dios desollado.
This must be done before the next new moon to appease the flayed god.
Si no cumplen con exactitud, chiats, her voice breaking, más como yo morirán.
If you do not comply exactly, more like me will die. Lucia's eyes widen with a dawning realization of her fate. She glances off camera again, her voice trembling as she implores her captor. Por favor, heis lo que pediste.
No quiero morir.
Please, I did what you asked. I don't want to die. Her plea is desperate, raw with the terror of a girl who knows she is speaking her last words. Tears stream down her face, smudging the white paint and dark lines, transforming her death mask into a tragic, melting visage. Her small frame trembles with sobs, and she clutches at the paper, crumpling it in her hands. The desperation in her eyes is unbearable. The screen goes black suddenly, the abruptness of it like a door slamming shut, leaving only the hollow echo of Lucia's screams in the otherwise silent pre-dawn. The cries taper off, dwindling into a stifled whimper that chokes off mid-breath, leaving a chilling silence in its wake. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know what other stories you want to hear. Also, what is your worst no-sleep story? Have a good day and remember, be vigilant.